All right, so to continue this discussion, we want to talk about Galactic Legend Rush and talk a little bit about the pros and cons of stabilizing your account first, going for Galactic Legend first, what that looks like for a normal player, and help any people watching this video to make those decisions for themselves. So joining me, I have Stryze. Stryze is a player who purchased the Hyperdrive bundle and went straight into the Supreme Leader Kylo Ren build, and it's pretty much as tight of a Galactic Legend rush as you could expect. Arva is a player that stabilized his account. He did more or less what we call the early Gladiator path with the Geos, built both Rebens, built Malak, and now he's going for the Sith Eternal Emperor as his Galactic Legend here in the near future. And then my account is somewhere in the middle. I stabilize with Geos and a lightweight Padme team, and pretty much beyond that have gone directly for the Sith Eternal Emperor. So we're going to kind of compare and contrast these three accounts, talk about how they're doing, the pros and cons, and just help people make the best decision for themselves with this kind of Galactic Legend push. So in the first, we're going to talk to Arva. Arva is currently at 1.37 million galactic power with 6 relics, 20 zetas. His best teams are Vader and the 2 Revan teams. He's currently working on a Relic 5 Trooper team, full team, which is going to lead him into the Sith Eternal Emperor build. As far as Grand Arena matchmaking, he has said, well, I don't think it's fair for my opponents. His win rate's nearly 100%, and in terms of matchups, he feels like there's really no significant challenges. Arva, does this seem like a pretty accurate assessment of your account?
Overall, yes. I think I would like to add that for the matchmaking in terms of GAC, I had matches where I think my opponent could have won. I think they always have at least some sort of chance. But it's quite often just knowing how you play your account makes it really hard for the opponent then. And obviously, I do have very powerful tools, so I feel confident that I can win every match. But it's not that the matchmaking per se means that I ought to win.
Okay, but you feel at least like the matchmaking has been fair to you, and you haven't come up against accounts where you go, how did I get matched up against this guy?
Not really.
Okay, and what would you say is your mod quality on your account?
My mod quality on my arena team is fairly good. It's overall, and I'd say the mod quality for the account overall is decent, but it, as always, can be improved. My tertiary teams, like my trooper team that's in progress, it's not that great yet. It's not bad though, like it's still in the area of plus 100 speed per mod set. But obviously it's I'd rather have it in the area of like 130.
Okay. But then basically what you're saying is your team always gives you a chance to win. You've got plenty of flexibility, and you've got good enough mods that your opponent can't just, beat you with better mods anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit to Strize about his account. A little bit higher GP, 1.87, and the difference there is mainly the Hyperdrive bundle that comes in underneath. He's got 12 relics, so a lot more relics than the Arva account. He's got 10 Zetas, but he also has 6 in the bank waiting for SLKR, so similar amount of Zetas. His 3 best teams are currently the Kylo Ren Unmasked First Order team, Vader, and then the First Order Remnants because, of course, they're relic level characters, so they can pull their weight in other areas. Current project, he's, as I understand it, you've got all the requirements done and you're working on your SLKR now as soon as the light side double drops are done. And then from what we talked about earlier, I think you said the next thing was into Geos into Padme. And the matchmaking right. You've said it's been fair, but it's been hard for you to win a lot, maybe 66%, 2/3 of the time. And when you get matched up against Revens, you feel like it's a uphill battle. Can you talk us through a little bit how you feel when you're setting up your grand arenas?
Sure. So I don't necessarily face a whole lot of other accounts like myself. So that are super top heavy, rushing something, lots of relics. So I often have quite a bit more relics than the other team. Although as I get higher every season, coming up into Rhodium up towards Kyber, I run into a lot better accounts, like Arva, like yourself, where I know they have a couple really good teams, and I just need to try to make the decision on whether or not to try to go full offense or put my biggest team on defense and just lock down the South. Is generally kind of how I have to approach it. There's a lot of scenarios where I look at an account, like if I was up against Arva's account, I would look up against his account, and I'm not sure how I would beat him. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a situation where he he has so much flexibility on how he can play it, and I feel like I don't. I feel like all I can do is try to put the bottom zone, something in the bottom zone.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so that's kind of the scenario I'm into. It just doesn't feel like I don't have enough teams that I can put on defense to do anything on offense, and I don't have enough offensive teams to be flexible. So it feels like a lot of the time I'm at the whim of the opponent to mess up, essentially.
Okay. So you've talked a little bit about what you feel like is kind of your power curve with starting this account and then as you developed through the account. Do you want to talk about that a little bit in terms of both squad arena and also grand arena?
Sure. So my initial focus wasn't necessarily on Grand Arena, although I quickly developed a want to do good in it just due to my competitiveness. So how things kind of worked is there was a lot of situations in the game where I felt like rushing SLKR gave me an up on other people. As soon as I hit that, 5 relics first order team, I felt like I was doing significantly better. That's everywhere from fleet, because of my quick advanced Kylo Ren unmasked and fleet. That allowed me to jump, up within the top 50 and then up within the top 20 really quickly as soon as I was rushing him, completed that. So in Grand Arena, it felt like there was a point where I hit my first 5 relic first order characters, put them bottom. Nobody could do anything about it, no matter what. Just due to the fact that other accounts had 1 relic person.
Yeah.
You know, so there was just nothing they could do, and then I would kind of take scraps in to just kind of clean up whatever I could and generally win at that point. As I have lengthened out my farm, progressed through my farm, and relicked other first order characters, there's a lot of first order characters that you throw relics into and they just don't feel influential for my account. So even though they're relics, I can rely on them to just winning, the bonk battle, right? But whenever I face any type of synergistic team or good team, it collapses, right? So it feels like both in Grand Arena and in Squad Arena, I came through. I hit a peak when I got my first couple of relics, and then I've been slowly declining in relation to others in the arena. and GAC.
Well, I mean, that's a really good thing, I think, to share with people, because that's what gets talked about a lot. If you rush a Galactic Legend, you're very, very quickly going to be so top heavy that you can't compete in Grand Arena. It's not going to be fun. What you're saying is, no, it's not really like that. You kind of have a power spike at first when you relic your first couple characters, that gets you going. And then you get a trough in the middle where you're finishing out your characters. You haven't got them done yet. You haven't got your payout yet of your SLKR. So it starts to decline. But then, you'll get your Galactic Legend and probably be back in another pretty significant power spike.
Right.
Interesting. So
there was a point in the game, when I started to relatively decline to other people getting my relics, where it just felt like, what was I doing? Am I making the wrong decisions in GAC? I should be winning, right? I've got so much more power in these. And as I started to understand, as like a 100k Padme team can beat my, 140k remnants of my FO, like, easily, soundedly, every single time. So it just came into a situation where I was on top of the world, and as I came down, I thought I was doing things wrong, but I later understood what was happening in GAC, right?
Yeah, so as you face people with a broader roster than yourself, you just run out of stuff. And like you said, a good chunk of the first order stuff that you do for SLKR really is low impact. So that's definitely something to consider. All right, so if we look at my account, this was it as of week 39. I had 1.57 million, so I'm right in between these two guys. 9 relics, again, 6 for Arva, 12 for Stryze, and 9 for me, so kind of right in the middle. 19 Zetas, so again, we're all kind of in that same ballpark. I don't have 6 Zetas saved up, though, that's for sure. My 3 best teams then are my Troopers, Padme, and Vader. And my current project is that I'm working on the Sith Eternal Emperor. The matchmaking, I think, has been fair. That doesn't mean that it's been, let's say, bad in terms of like good or bad or fair. It means that it's been fair. I feel like the teams that I've been matched up against are a fair representation of similar accounts. And, the harder ones that I get matched up again is fun, because I like the hard battles. And so I think I've had some of each. Overall, I think I've won about 80% of all the Grand Arenas with my Loquitur account. There are some accounts, especially accounts with Revens, that have a Malik. If they also have a Grievous team behind it somewhere, then it just really stretches my resource thin dealing with, let's say, Revens, Geos, and a Grievous all on defense. And those are the accounts that have been really hard for me to win. But I would say the way that I've built my account, taking a little detour for the Padme team, I've built a little bounty hunter team in the background, but it hasn't really slowed me down too much. We're only going to relic 3 characters that aren't in the Sea Journey. So it's pretty well on track. It's pretty focused. But I would say I've probably delayed my Sith Eternal by about 3 months with the way I built my account, doing a lot of stabilization and pulling in a bunch of other teams first. So I'll get my C probably about 3 months later than I could have if I just focused up and done straight in on that. But I was afraid of that power curve that Stryze was talking about, and I didn't want to face that trough when you're doing the second half of your Galactic Legend, and you end up just getting spread too thin in Grand Arena. And I like Grand Arena a lot, so I feel like as I build my Galactic Legend, I needed to build up some filler teams to make sure that we're doing well. And so it's a balance. It's a balance of each. And that Revan style account is kind of the nemesis. Again, because it's so flexible, like we talked about. Arva, you're going for C next. How long do you think what you've done for your account with going for the Revens into Malik, how long do you think that delays Sith Eternal from when you could have gotten him?
So honestly, I think we'll have delayed it by like 4 to 5 months. Simply because that Malak requirements are actually really needy in terms of gear. That entire Old Republic team, having to put them to gear 12, that really was a big slump also during the account building, where I basically had not so great GAC teams. My arena team was slowly getting pushed out of top 50 to the point where I basically only could get top 100, and it felt progress was slowing down a lot. But then after basically I got my Malak, I feel like progress is actually accelerating at an insane rate right now. Because that team gets me top 1 squad arena, well, top 2 depending if it's my day or not. So that's a lot of crystals there. And also, obviously, it's doing well in GAC, it's doing well in Territory Wars, it's doing well in Geo Darkside TB.
And you're saying that you got box 6 in Conquest?
Yeah.
Okay. And Stryze, what did you get in the last Conquest? I think you got box 5, did you say?
Box 5, right.
Yeah. So, and then in like the Galactic Challenges, I think you said you typically get the 6 or 7 box. Stryze?
Yeah, the one for 85 points, right. I sometimes I even find it hard to get that because the bottom of my count doesn't have, I don't have any troopers. I don't have, I've got very basic clones, bounty hunters, Jedi, all of that type thing, right? So almost every galactic challenge, I'm fighting for a way to just get a couple more tokens to hit up to 85. On the galactic challenges where it's a first order challenge, I can hit the next box up, no problem. The 110, but I can't necessarily get higher than that without my SLKR yet.
Okay. And then Arva, I think you routinely get box 7 or 8. Is that correct?
I usually get box 8 if I don't have a faction for that box. Simply because either my JKR or my Darth Revan, basically most of the time my Darth Revan and Malak team can just clear the last tier fairly easily, and usually the feats are also built in a way that I can get them with one of my top teams.
But you have quite a bit of flexibility in the undermanning or getting dodges or attacks out of turn. You have several teams that do different stuff, so you can a lot of times scoop up some of those background feats then.
Exactly. Basically, that's how I get my high boxes. I basically max out all the background feats, or at least to a degree where I get that box 8. For example, that Darth Revan team, we have that feat where you need to kill multiple people in the same turn. It does that greatly with BSF for AoE.
Yeah.
Then I have JKR for attacks out of turn, and offense up, stuff like that. And also, GMI can get the stealth feats done sometimes. Well, and then now I do also have a vet beta for dot feeds, stuff like that. So.
Okay. So let's say, for instance, for all three of us, we're all three going to answer this question. Let's say we start our next round of Grand Arena, and regardless if it's 3v3 or 5v5, let's say we go into our next round of Grand Arena, and we find ourselves matched up against somebody who did a true rush. They're at our galactic power, and they already have a galactic legend in the account and on the table with its alt. Start with Strize. What would you do if you were faced with an account like that? And it's a legitimate threat for you because you're literally at the point where you're getting your galactic legend, and all it would take is for them to have one more relic than you, being the galactic legend. So you could get match made with somebody like that. What would you do?
That is a good question. I've thought about it a little bit, and I think it essentially comes down to mods at that point. If somebody has rushed a Galactic Legend as quickly as me, I guess maybe it depends on the Galactic Legend a little bit, SLKR versus C. But overall, it comes down to neither of us having much depth in our roster at the moment. So I think what I would do is just put in a light defense and rely on my mods and skill to outbanner. Maybe put in a couple teams that could steal banners, like a Grievous team. That's something I want to work towards, just simply for that scenario, getting some banner stealing teams.
Okay. Well, let's say that you've got your Galactic Legend in place. You finished him out. You've got the ult on him. Would you typically be playing him on defense or offense?
I would likely play him on defense. I think that's just kind of the way to go with SLKR. Especially if I'm up against another SLKR. What's he going to do? Offense, and then it essentially negates each other. He's put up weaker defenses, which I can hopefully exploit. So I think that's just the way I would play it. And maybe that's wrong, and maybe I'd have a different opinion as I gain more experience in that matchup. But I think there's not a whole lot of options from my account facing another SLKR. Maybe you would disagree.
No, I think it's important for people to hear and to understand. So if they're newer players and they're working their way toward a Galactic Legend against an account that has one, the temptation to put it on defense is pretty strong because you want to make your opponent beat it. So that's just to say, if you do find yourself facing a Galactic Legend, you kind of get the feeling like, well, we're going to put it on defense. We're going to let both Galactic Legends hold, and we're going to duke it out in the rest of the zones. So, Arva, same thing, your account where you're at right now, you get faced up against a Galactic Legend, what would you do?
I think I'll have to answer the question in like two parts, because the answer basically shifted with the last road ahead. Before that road ahead, my plan was getting my SLKR counter going. It incidentally also works well against the basic C lineups that are not filled with full civs. So I would have felt confident and actually beating that GL at that point.
Okay, so you're saying with your Darth Revan counter, which includes Thrawn, you're just going to straight up beat the Galactic Legend and take it off the board.
That was basically the plan. Now that is off the board. Well, I mean, it's not yet off the board for another month or so, but let's be realistic. That part is done. So now I'd have probably would make him do a 0 zone clear. Usually, SLKR accounts have very limited offensive firepower beside SLKR. They have high relic characters, but the First Order team, it doesn't punch up well.
No, it does not.
With SLKR, but basically I can place my Malak and my Grievous and my Geos there. Geos are actually fairly important because the First Order team has basically no way to really deal with it besides the Sith Trooper and potentially a Vader. That's the only ways the First Order account can realistically deal with Geos. Then there's my Grievous team. At best, it will only steal a lot of banners. At worst, it will just hold. And then obviously the Malak team is just going to not be beatable for him, unless he has his GL on offense. And then additionally, right now in my division, we have 2 zones in front of Fleet. So I'm sure that's where the SLKR is, if he's smart. So I'd actually put my best fleet on defense as well, because I'm not getting to fleet then. So even if he gets through that zone, he's more or less done.
Yeah. So at most, he gets a 1 zone clear.
Basically, because I put my Malak in front of the character zones, and the other teams, 2 teams in front of the character zones. Sorry, in front of fleet zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
And that would leave me with my JKR and my Vader. My JKR can clear Relic 7 Karu team without problems. I've done that in Arena plenty of times already. It's insanely how hard this team punches up against First Order. And then I have my Vader to, well, clear the rest, and potentially Troopers later then. But Troopers aren't actually not that great against First Order, so...
Well, they're great against First Order unless they have Hux. If they have Hux, then it's just a no-go. It's a non-starter.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so then just overall, I think we've given people a pretty balanced idea, of what this would look like. And I suppose I need to answer the question too, but my answer is so similar to Arva's that there's no value in it. Because I would do the same thing. I would just try to use all of my roster to stretch them out on defense. I would let them have the hold and give them nothing. And then, like you said, do a 2-zone clear on offense for the win. Yeah, so I think that wraps up most of what I wanted to plan out. So do you guys have anything else that you would want to just share with people who are thinking about what path to pick and whether or not this Galactic Legend Rush is the right thing?
So I personally think it's important that you know that each path will have its basically downs at some point in the timeline. And it really depends for you, when do you want that downtime? For example, for an SE rush, the downtime is actually not that bad, because you can just go into Relic with Vader EP early, and that will let you cruise through a lot of things. Obviously, the high, once you get C, is definitely not as high as getting an SLKR. Whereas with SLKR, you're basically doing averagely most of the time till you get SLKR. And then for non-GL rushes, like for example my account that's here, you have that time where you get the first arena team, in my case JKR. That's a great time. That's soon after 85. You feel incredibly powerful for a free-to-play account. Obviously you still don't catch up to the hyperdrive accounts, but that's fine. So you feel incredibly powerful, and then you start that farming for Malak. And that's where you're slowly getting to a point where that powerfulness, like, you're not making progress on your arena team, so it feels, and you're making only progress on bad teams, basically, like with all the public. And it feels like you're slowly drifting, falling behind, and then you get that Malak, and that's basically when you start off like a rocket. And that will hold on for probably the next months, until you, especially in your squad arena shard, till that gets populated by GLs. That's when you start feeling falling off again and again, and but that's when you're also in your GL farm, and depending which GL you farm again, you get power in other areas. For example, with C, you get troopers going, you get that Vader going, and that also feels reasonably powerful. So you don't feel that big slump of where you're like, okay, my GAC is bad right now, I'm not doing well, I don't have enough teams, or I don't have enough powerful teams. I can say with SLKR, it probably might feel a bit more like where you're not having the greatest of times, but like it's even then, Relic First Order team it's not that bad because it still will give you the option of putting that, for example, on defense and requires a proper answer.
Yeah.
And then obviously you get that GL and you're gonna feel like, oh yeah, again.
Yeah. All right, so Stryze, knowing what you know now, would you pick the same path again?
That's a good question. I don't think so. Just because of I'm there. You know, I've hit that SLKR. I've got, you know, a big bonk stick ready to just destroy everything in my path for a little while, you know. Coming into the game, I'm still a fairly new player, started in March here, but coming into the game, I had a friend who, you know, was a main officer in, you know, a big alliance that got me into a guild fairly easily. With an SLKR rush, you're going to run into a lot of guilds that just aren't going to bring you in. And not getting into a good guild and getting a lot of those mats toward relicking those characters would be difficult. You know, it would pull on your desire to play the game, to be honest. So I got a little bit lucky in that fact, and my guild has allowed me to participate, you know what I mean? Get the rewards with the context of I'm giving them a C-pit team. You know what I mean? And that was kind of my main focus coming into the game. I will say one of the first videos I watched was Arnold's video, you know, SLKR rush, go, go, go. And I thought, oh, that's the way to play this game no matter what, right? Who's the biggest, baddest character? How do I get to him as quick as possible so I can start dominating things? So I started down that path, and before I really got into GAC and decided, oh, I want to do well in this. I love this. I was a little bit too far into my SLKR rush to pivot, I felt like. So I've completed it, and now my focus is to kind of stabilize afterwards into teams. So eventually I think we get to a similar spot, right? I think that's the idea, although I think I've got a good account at the moment. One thing about the guild, some guilds will, if you can really show focus and you're throwing down money for the hyper bundle right away, some guilds will just take you on that, right? You can show that you can streamline a process and get them a team quickly, especially if they're working on getting teams for CPIT, then you can get a guild that way. So
yeah, so you're saying that you know, you had a route in, so you were able to get a good guild without having to, let's say, qualify for it as such.
Right.
But if you had to do it over again now, you might do a little more stabilizing before you went for the SLKR. That's interesting.
Right. There's I would have went Geos, you know, at least Geos first. I think that's the way. Maybe even Geos into Padme, into something, right? It's felt very difficult not having a light side team, you know, to be able to contribute in different parts of the game with a light side team. So that's my focus kind of going forward in the immediate future here. So
All right. Well, I think that's going to be about it. You guys got any last words?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna chime in here. I think I'm actually in a bit different spot compared to Stryze. Like, with that road ahead, I think I would have done a complete C rush under the premise that I would have gotten into a good guild. That would have kind of supported that. Without a good guild, like having to build the GS to get into one, I think I wouldn't have done it. But if I could have basically had the support of a good guild, I'd done a C rush. just out of bat.
Okay. Well,
Especially with seeing how one of my shardmates, how fast he could get his without any building other teams.
okay. Well, then at the risk of hearing something I don't want to hear, what do you think about the way that I'm building the Loquitur account? You know, I've built a couple teams specifically for Grand Arena to balance out my defenses and working on my Emphas Nest. So I'm delaying my C, but let's say getting a better game experience, in my opinion, because of it. Do you think that's a good approach?
I think that's certainly an approach that works. I just built that old with the premise after the shard changes that I wanted to do as well in Arena as soon as I could. Back then, getting into that Malak very quickly and then building a GL counter to stay relevant in there till you get your own GL going was a very viable thing for me. Now, if I want to stay relevant in Arena, doing that early with that beta team from C and then into C itself seems to be the better option for purely for squad Arena. I don't think it definitely would do less well in GAC and stuff. So there's that.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting that the guy who rushed the Galactic Legend says he would stabilize more, and the guy who stabilized the most said he'd just rush a Galactic Legend. That's that's a very interesting outcome. Yeah.
I mean, but it's purely with how the road ahead has planned out.
Yeah,
just purely with that.
Yeah, because you thought
that
because you thought. Sorry, keep talking over each other.
Yeah.
So you thought that you were going to be able to easily have at least one Galactic Legend counter team, and that would allow you to stop the Galactic Legend while you were building your own. So now that's different, and it makes less sense. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, not specifically for GAC, but for Squad Arena.
Gotcha.
Because that's what I have been doing on my main for the last 2 or 3 months. I have a GL counter, and that allows me to get top 1. Well, top 5 basically, depending with whom I share my payout right now.
So then you're saying you're gonna go for that early spike. You're gonna grab a couple relic characters right away to establish yourself in Squad Arena. You're gonna go through the trough where that falls off, but then you're gonna have your Galactic Legend and start getting your resources out of Squad, and only people with other Galactic Legends can challenge you. So interesting.
I will say one thing about your account. Over the past little while, farming up, my garbage FO, it's been difficult watching you play GAC and sitting here thinking, oh, he's going to clear these 2 zones. They're going to fight over these 2 zones. Then I realize, oh, he's got 3 other good teams he can use. He's got so many options for this. You know what I mean? And just watching you call out troopers, this is how it's going to go. I can't do that with any of my teams. There's no reliability on being able to put anybody on offense at the moment. Yeah, maybe when I get my SLKR, I'll be able to call the shots like that. We'll see.
Yeah.
I to specifically say, I wouldn't rush SLKR for me. I would never do that because I think that rush is actually the most unfun of the 2 rushes early because the first order team it's just not as powerful as some other teams.
Yeah, C gives you... It feels better getting the C teams. The Troopers, the Sith, I mean, those teams feel okay. Like you said, though, the First Order, it kind of falls flat. But I think the key to it is, and I think what I'm going to recommend, in the Emperor path, and I think what a lot of people are going to realize, at some point when you're building the SLKR rush, what you need to do is only relic the top 3 characters in First Order. Kylo Ren Unmasked, the Red Sith Trooper, and the Kylo Ren mask that you can solo teams with. And if you keep the other ones just at Relic 0 and just wait until you have all the SLKR requirements done, and then you were to go in there and relic them all at once, I think you'd have the best of both worlds. I think you'd have a good Grand Arena experience. It wouldn't give you any problems. And you wouldn't have nearly as deep of a trough because you could divide those First Order up into 3 or 4 different teams with Relic Zeros, and the people that you would be facing at a similar matchup aren't going to have Relic characters to beat those teams. And you could really establish some sincere dominance in Grand Arena and then just kind of leapfrog it, and you'll put on 500,000 galactic power overnight when you relic all those characters and get ready for your actual unlock of your SLKR. But then that weakness, that trough that you're in, only lasts one Grand Arena season. Then you're back on top of the world. So I definitely think there's a better way to do the rush that doesn't hurt you as badly in Grand Arena. But overall, I understand what you're saying. The Sith Eternal just gives you more good teams as you're building it up.
Yeah, and specifically, it gives you a better Squad Arena team. That's basically what I mean. But then, that is all. Trying to be competitive in Squad Arena, we always know that, especially as free-to-play, it's an uphill battle. And sometimes you just can't do it because your arena shot is very, very competitive early. Sometimes you can do it because your arena shot is not that competitive, or you have nice people that actually weaken their GL teams, stuff like that. That is hard to take as a benchmark that it's always gonna be that way. You can always pull that off, because that would be untrue.
Fair enough. All right. Well, hey, I really want to thank you guys for your participation, talking through the accounts in this little clip. I think this could potentially help some people make some decisions when they're trying to figure out what to do with their early game accounts. Thanks again for your time, guys. Really appreciate it. And see you around.
Well, thanks for having us.
No problem. Thanks for having us. Absolutely.